Hi guys, it looks like we are back. As everybody knows, the internet's a little bit wonky right now. I have my phone because I'm trying to see if there's any questions or any of that stuff kind of coming up. So I'm going to start all over again. I'm Jess with Crow Creek Designs. Woodworkers Guild and I have partnered up, and we are going to bring you 5 resin projects to get you started on pretty much anything resin related you want to know. Again, I'm just looking at my phone to kind of collect any questions that come in. I'm going to go over some of the items that you need to have on hand in order to make this a successful projects for you. And anything else you might be interested in knowing, like what kind of pigments to use, what kind of wood we're using, anything like that. Feel free to ask, and I will be checking them as they come in. So let's kind of get started on some of the things that we're going to be doing. There's only one item that I'm missing here, and it's because we're going to make a coffee table, and I couldn't put that in my lap here. It'd be a little bit weird. But that being said, let me see here. Get caught up. Sorry again. Sorry for it being kind of laggy and having to look at my phone and the screen at the same time. So one of the things we're going to be making is these coasters. Now, these are super great for starter projects. They're really easy. They're just black and white, but you can use any colors that you want. Now, that being said, some of the things we're going to be using is mica powders. Now, and I get it. We're in a weird situation where you can't necessarily go to the store, but you can use chalk if mica powder isn't available. If you do have mica powder, that's fantastic. You can use any color that you want. Another thing that I'm going to be using, and you'll see this in the examples, is mix-all pigments. But again, if you're in a pinch, you can use acrylic paint. The only thing you really can't use is don't use latex paint, okay? Latex paint and epoxy isn't going to work for you. So think spray paint. Again, that's something you can use if you really can't get access to colors. I know Total Boat, which is the resin that I use, is still shipping right now currently, and they carry the entire mix-all line. So you're able to get your pigments and everything from them if you need it. And then epoxy, of course. So make sure you have your epoxy. This is just a little container of little containers of maker epoxy. If you're looking just to get your feet wet, this would get you through the first 2 projects, but you would definitely need more if you wanted to do the bench, which is right behind me. I took the legs off just so I could put it up here and show you. Or the river table. We're going to do a big river table. If you've been wanting to do one of those, here's a great way to do it. It uses a very minimal amount of epoxy and wood. So I'm going to show you kind of a cheat method to get a river table without having to do a large pour. So let me show you some of the projects, other ones we're going to be doing. We're going to do this clock here. Again, if you can't get access to a round or if you can't cut a round, you can use a square. You can use anything that you want. We've got the northern lights going on it. We've even got a tree line on here. I promise you this seems very complicated, but if you grew up when I did, you know who Bob Ross is. If Bob Ross can teach people how to do this, you can do this. It's very easy. It requires minimal. Even if you don't like this part, just leave it out. You still got a really cool clock. Another thing we're going to be doing, which is very trendy, they're great for gifts. Master woodworkers do them. Beginner woodworkers do them. It's just a really great kind of gateway project to not only woodworking, but resin if you're great at woodworking and you need a resin help. These little trays. We've got the wave here at the bottom. It's a little bit hard to see right here, but we've got lots of cells, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that, show you the trick to achieving this look. It does involve the mix-all white, but if you're really stuck, I'm going to, when we come back on and do these lives during the event, I will address some kind of cheat ways that we can kind of get there if you aren't able to get the mix-all right away. So again, this is one of our fun things we're going to be doing. Great gifts, great colors. I've seen people do this in sunset colors instead of the ocean. It looks fantastic, guys. You can really use any color you want So don't feel like you're stuck because you don't have maybe the particular color that I'm using. Let's see. So we talked about the clock. We've talked about the coasters. I've got, again, the bench back here. I'm going to show you how to do that, get this all leveled and neat. And I'm kind of waiting to see if there's any questions in here, if you guys have any things that you need. A little bit about me. When you get to that point, you can do stuff like this. It's kind of hard to see, but I have this brick that I'm going to end up turning into pen blanks. And once you get comfortable with a lot of these smaller nuances, like how to mix your epoxy properly so you don't have any spots that haven't been cured, how to add the proper amount of color, you'll start experimenting with the things that you can add to it because you have that confidence. And that's what we're here to teach you. We're going to teach you how to just not be afraid. You're not going to have any waste. All of these little things that prevent people from doing epoxy work, we're going to cover. And if I haven't covered it, ask the question and I will cover it for you, even if it's very specific. We've also got stuff like this. This is just on a birch panel. So, but this looks like a huge piece of art. So think about all the other things you can do. Molly asked, does this require special ventilation? Yeah, we want to make sure that we're working in an area that is well ventilated. Even if you are stuck in maybe a smaller apartment, if you can go to an area that you can open the window, depending on your outside environment, make sure that you're having those fume masks right now. Absolutely the best thing that you can do. Total Boat epoxy is low to no VOC. So in the realm of epoxies, it is definitely a better one for situations where you don't have a mask. But if you are using a different epoxy brand that has a higher VOC rating, you definitely want to make sure that you're wearing a mask. Remember, all of these projects you can do later on. So if you can't do it right now due to your circumstances, because things are a little bit strange, save it, come back to it. We'll make sure that you guys are taken care of. We're trying to accommodate and work around a little bit of a different rollout than we had anticipated. So make sure you do have ventilation. If you have a mask, wear it. I have found that if you don't have gloves, because gloves right now are a little bit in short supply, you can use mechanics gloves. Just clean them off with acetone afterwards if you have acetone or alcohol, and you can kind of reuse them. Trying to think of any other workarounds that we might not need due to the current situation. But if you guys have a question, drop it in there. We'll make sure to get it answered. It will be a lot of fun. We're definitely going to have fun. I can't wait to see everything that everybody's going to do, the different color choices you're going to use. We're going to talk about, again, this clock is a perfect example. These are very opaque colors and people get a little bit scared when it comes to that. Whereas these ones are pretty light. So I'm going to pick up my phone, see if there's any questions going on here. Not ignoring you. Let's see. What are a few things you need to start your resin project? So a couple of things that you're going to need to have is some sort of protectant. You can't really see it, but I'm kind of sitting on top of these silicone mats right here. These are great if you have those. A lot of people have them in if you do a lot of glue ups. Or if you don't have those, you can use a plastic trash bag. Seriously, so use a plastic trash bag, gloves, ventilation, epoxy, wood. Again, if you don't have a particular round right now, or you can't make one, or if you don't have access to a big giant slab, use whatever you have on hand and still practice. You still will have a lot of fun. Jenna, how did you start with resin? I started because I have always had an art background, but I love woodworking and I love building. Absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite things. So I kind of started by actually just painting on dressers that I was building. And then I started realizing that I wanted to do, I had a client and she wanted a galaxy whale. I'm not kidding you. She wanted to get a whale, and the whale needed to be about 5 feet long. It was going on a queen headboard that I'd built, and she wanted it to look like a galaxy. So I started doing a lot of research. I'm like, gosh, I could just paint this, but Sure, come on, I can make this way cooler. And that was actually my very first resin project. It is on my Instagram as well as my Facebook on Crow Creek Designs. And if you scroll down, you'll see this whale, and it's lit up from the back. And that was my very first resin project. And I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked from there, with all of the possibilities and things that you can do. John asks, how many colors do you suggest for these projects? So what I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 total. So you could use the black and the white on your coasters, which would be the same black and white that you could use for the night portion, the trees, the snow. Then keep carrying over. The white is here as well as on here. And then the blues that I used on both this, and the coffee table that I don't have present right now is the same blues. You can adjust the colors by adding more or adding less. So let's say that you only have blue. By adding a little less to the epoxy, you can make it more translucent, and then add a little bit more to it, and you can make it darker. So you can kind of make it seem like you have different colors if you have limited colors right now. Let's see, Garrett, do you need to have your wood perfectly sanded before you start your resin? I'm very new to the art side of woodworking. Hey, thanks for asking. Actually, no. We're going to keep the project sanding down to a minimal. We really want the resin to get into those fibers and adhere. So it's actually better if we don't super sand, get our project to a fine finish sanding. We want to leave it about 120. I just kind of do a light cleanup on it. Some projects I don't sand at all if I really, really want it to get in there. Again, with like the charcuterie board, for instance, I'd have to say I think I only did bring this one up to 120 before I did it. And then if you have to finish it, you can sand over resin completely. A lot of people don't realize that. It's really, really hard to see, but this is 16 feet behind me. It is a bar top, and right now it's flat looking because I have sanded the whole thing and I'm adding another layer of epoxy to it. I won't sand this above 120. When I drop a flood coat of resin on that, it's going to bring the entire thing back to life. The shine will end up being just like this. And you can kind of see the reflection in the lights. I know we're a bit laggy, so I apologize about that, but it'll bring it right back. So you don't have to sand any more than 120. I'm trying to think of what else that you guys potentially need here. And to get started, we got a lot of fun stuff coming up. I think you're really going to enjoy these things that we have going on. It's going to give you a gateway for things that you've maybe wanted to try and you haven't tried. Again, the cheat on the river table is pretty cool. I think you guys are really going to enjoy that. We all love those gigantic river pours, and they're a little bit expensive. And when you're learning, you kind of don't want to spend that much money on something you may not feel comfortable with. So I show you a fantastic cheat on that. Let's see, John says, can you put resin in wood pieces that aren't flat, say handle? Yeah, absolutely. You can build a mold using either melamine, or you can use PTEC, heavy duty acrylic, and then you can turn or you can cut. Let's say you're making a knife handle. You said a handle, but let's just say we're making a knife handle. You can put this in the mold, just like I did here with this, and I can either then take this to the bandsaw, slice it, shape my knife handle, or like I'm going to go ahead and do, you could turn it on a lathe to do this, but this is just a big old chunk of resin. And it kind of looks like little mountains because that's what I was going for. But this was just left. This one wasn't even in anything specific. I think that I just put this in a leftover container and let it cure. So absolutely, you can put it in things that aren't flat. I've done where you carve out styrofoam and pour the resin on top of the styrofoam, kind of in a wave pattern. Like, don't mind my weird arm here, but let's say it's like this. You got the styrofoam here. You've cut out the styrofoam. put the resin on top of it, let it cure, then the resin has this shape to it. So again, these are all things that hopefully down the line we'll get to cover with you guys with this continued exploration and bring you all of the answers that you need. So let's see if we have any more questions or how everybody's doing over there. So many things. I have a lag on all of my equipment. I think there's like a couple million people on the internet here, but it looks like we're good. So to recap, things that you need to have on hand. Any sort of substrate that you're going to use. Again, if you don't have the exact things that we're working on, don't stress. Learn the basics, learn how to do it. Get your epoxy ordered if you already don't have some. Like I said, Total Boat is still shipping out. That's who I use for epoxy, but there are other brands out there. If that you're comfortable with, go ahead and use those or get it ordered. Colors, if you can get a hold of the Mix-All, as previously mentioned, they come in these big containers, so you can get these ordered as well. Those kind of things. Look, I've got a couple more questions. Justin says, thanks for the tips. I've made a coaster before and I'm excited to try more. Great. I'm excited to have you on here. It's going to be a lot of fun and I can't wait to see what you guys do. Like, I really love that. I want to see the different color choices. I want to know where you're getting frustrated because I want to be able to help you. I flew blind with learning epoxy and wasted so much money on things that I'm like, oh, if somebody would have just told me that. But nobody was telling me that. So I want to be here for you guys so you don't feel like you have to waste it. AJ asks, how long it takes to dry? So it all depends. Now, a thick set, if you're we're not using a thick set during these projects. That's kind of the cheat for the river table. If you were using a thick set, it takes about 3 days. So you really need to keep it protected, keep crud out of it. If you are using a tabletop formula, 24 hours, you're good to go. It's pretty much not tacky. About the 6-7 hour mark, if you've got a stable shop environment, which I keep my shop at 72 degrees, that's a perfect time for resin to cure. So you got that. I'm trying to think, like a penetrating epoxy, that takes a little bit more. Penetrating epoxy takes about 24 hours till it's fully dry, but that's a very specific product. AJ also asks, how to prevent a tacky surface over time, wear and tear over time. So if your project is tacky, I'd be a little bit concerned with if your epoxy ratio is right. If your epoxy says full cure in 24 hours and you're 48, 36 hours out and you're still tacky, there's a high probability that the ratio may not have been correct. If it's getting tacky over time, as in like it was cured, and then you notice 6 months later it's starting to become tacky, a lot of times actually the culprit is the cleaning supplies. Things alcohol-based will break down epoxy over time, and it kind of, I don't know if I would say it maybe is tacky as much as it just kind of halts. If you run your hand over it, it's just like kind of like that. So maybe your cleaning supplies are an issue there. So you can try that. And then the wear and tear over time. Yeah, it does. It will. I've done a lot of countertops. I have a lot of countertops in restaurants. I've done a lot of tables. And a good tabletop formula will really help prevent that. This is, again, important, knowing what epoxy for which project. A deep pour is not necessarily designed to be a super strong product, whereas a tabletop formula is 100% designed for bar tops and tabletops. So that's kind of your first go-to, right epoxy for the right project. Your second thing is making sure that it's again, what are you putting on it? Are you putting hot stuff on it that's creating little divots and rings? That could be a problem. Way to fix that, you can either sand it down and do another flood coat. I'm having to do one. I've got a couple countertops that are about 2 years out, and they are just now starting to kind of show a little bit of wear and tear. And these are high-end countertops that are in bars, so they're seeing a lot of traffic, a lot of especially summer traffic during this tourist season here in Alaska. So I think they've held up pretty well. So I'm thinking about the 2.5-3 year mark in order to get it back to a full shine. Just do another flood coat on it. It's good to go. So hopefully that answers that question on that. How should people protect their drying resin? That is a fantastic question. If it's a small project like the clock, you can take a like a plastic tub or container, literally, just put it on top of it. Once it's dry, put it on top of it. You won't get any dust or any particulate in there. If it's a large project like this countertop behind me, you can build a tent ahead of time out of some heavy metal plastic, out of a tarp, whatever's clean. You want to make sure it's clean. Just build yourself a little A-frame tent with some 2x2s. Do your pour, put the tent over it, then kind of just make sure you've pulped out any of the particulate or dust particles or anything that you're concerned about, bugs, and leave the tent over it and try not to disturb it. That'll absolutely protect everything that you have going on at that time. Like I said, I'm a super fan of little buckets for little projects, but other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Let's see, Jenna, any tips on fixing a resin mistake? Yes, my favorite things. This was the first thing I actually learned because I screwed up so much. So let's use our lovely clock again as an example. Let's say I had a spot that maybe I didn't mix very well, and now it's not cured. So instead of having to scrap the whole project, what you can do is either take a Dremel, depending on the size of the uncured spot. You can take a Dremel or you could take a chisel and chisel out that section. And even on this, let's say even on this, I have this nice color under here. What I would do is chisel it out and hope that it didn't go all the way to the wood. If it went all the way to the wood, you can just touch up with some paint. Then do a flood coat over it. You will not be able to see it. Again, on my Instagram, I had a disaster of a project. I had almost a 2-foot section get ruined. It didn't cure. It was coming up in sheets. And this was recent too. This was recent. Chiseled it all out, cleaned it up with acetone where all the sticky was that it never cured, did another flood coat, and you would never have known that there was any problem with it. If you absolutely hate your project, let's say you've done all this, you don't like the way it looks, the best way to do that is you can scrape the epoxy off while it is uncured. Take it and put it into a mold. I don't have any handy right here with me where I'd show you that, but you could take it, scrape it off into a silicone mold, and you've made a bunch of coasters. So repurpose that epoxy and then try again. Without kind of knowing what mistake you're referring to, because there's unfortunately a lot of mistakes that happen. I can list 24 of them right now that people constantly kind of experience. So without knowing that, I couldn't fix that exact one. I'm trying to think. If you're having bubbling over, you probably not used the right epoxy for the right project. So maker epoxy, tabletop 2-to-1s, those are only designed to be about some of them a 1/2 inch maximum pour, no matter what the space is. If you're doing, say, a traditional river pour, which are usually 2 to 3 inches thick, and you go ahead and dump those epoxies in there, you're going to have what's called an exothermic reaction, and that's where it literally bubbles up and ruins the entire project. So those are some of the other things that you really want to avoid. Leah says, would a space heater be warm enough to heat up my working space? I don't have a shop. I can set to 72. Yeah, just make sure that if you're using a space heater in a small confined space, safety first there, so make sure you're doing that. If you can bring your epoxy maybe into your house and stick it up high on a shelf where that heat is, 24 hours ahead of time to get it nice and flowing. You really want the epoxy to be warm. That would be optimal. That's one way to do it. You're not going to pour in your house, but just kind of keep it up there. If you did a space heater, yes, again, keeping in mind that we want to make sure that you're staying safe first by having a space heater in a small space. Heat up the shop or the area that you're working in. And you can, in all reality, you can pour at 68 degrees. 72 is just that much more optimal. So really, if you're at 68, don't panic. That's still totally doable depending on your environment. So anyway, set up your shop heater or your space heater. Get your environment to 72. Then depending on the size of your project, go ahead and turn off the heater, do your pour, and just monitor. If the temperature gradually is falling down, I'm here in Alaska and we're already experiencing stable temps in the 30s and the 40s. So I could heat my shop up to 75, do my pour, and then gradually let the temperature maybe get back down to 68 degrees, and it's not going to affect my cure time. So there's lots of ways around that. You just want to try to keep it as stable as possible with not going from like 50 degrees to 80 degrees. That's going to cause a problem because it's going to cause uneven temperature, obviously, but the top of the resin will obviously cool down first, but that underside is not curing at the same rate. Let's see. Kevin says, I've had water ruin my projects before. It's such a shame. Absolutely. One thing that's really hard is I see people say, let's say I wanted to heat up this epoxy because it wasn't warm. They'll stick this in a water bucket. And one of the biggest problems with that is if you're not super careful. Let me go ahead and open these. So I've got these sitting in a water bucket, and I take it out. And I'm pouring it in here, and I'm not noticing, and I'm not sure if this is exactly, Kevin, what you're talking about, but it's a great point. I get a drop of water that falls in my cup, and I maybe didn't notice it. So I'm mixing halfway, I do my pour, and then I've got a spot that hasn't cured right. It's because water got in there. It's just not, it's not something you can use at all. You shouldn't have it around your epoxy, just because mistakes do happen. I've done it. There's nothing that you guys can hit me with a question or a mistake that you've done or something that didn't go right that I have not done. One of my favorite things that I've done is with gallon containers, I have put the wrong freaking lid back on the wrong container. These little ones, they thankfully come with a dot on one, and most containers have a black lid and a white lid. Wasn't paying attention, unscrewed both, did my pour, put the lids back on, go to do it again. Oh no, it's not coming off at all. So I had lids stuck to gallons of epoxy that I then had to slice the entire thing off and figure out how to protect the hardener and the epoxy. So again, please don't be afraid to ask any questions. There is not a single stupid question when it comes to epoxy resin, because I have made every single mistake that you can think of. What's the best stirring materials to make sure you don't ruin good tools? I love popsicle sticks. I'm a super big fan of popsicle sticks because you can use them for your color mixing. Another great thing, and I can't get to it right this moment, is rubber spatulas and rubber paint stirrers that you can get at the paint store. Once the epoxy is cured, you can just break those right off. And a lot of these things actually, and this is a good time to mention that, we do have an entire Woodworkers Guild, and I have an entire class coming out that covers all of this. So, I mean, we talk about the methods of stirring. We talk about the things to use for stirring. We dive deep into color and what's the best way to do it. We even go into finishing. So it's literally an A to Z epoxy experience for all of these things. But those are some of the quickest things. You can grab rubber spatulas from any baking store, from most grocery stores. They just have, because they're cool now. It's cool to have a silicone spatula. They're great in epoxy shop because wait for them to cure, scrape it or give it a twist, it'll break right off. I love these plastic cups. Once it's cured in here, let's say you've got a little bit left in the rim, just roll it between your hands. The epoxy will pull right out and you're able to reuse it. So those are another great thing for reuse, recycle. Mike, besides doing another pour, what would you recommend to remove fine grit standing marks? Buffing. Use a car buffing compound or a boat buffing compound. Total Boat makes a buffing compound specifically for resin, and I'm pretty sure that there are a couple of other companies that do that, but I don't honestly know the name of them right off the top of my head. But if you're in a pickle, you can go down to the auto body shop and you want to get, I am a fan of the 3M brand. They make an auto polishing kit, and it comes with kind of a nubby polishing pad as well as some other things. It'll bring you right back to a shine. In my opinion, it just takes a little bit more work because you got to work your way all the way up to like infinite grit. So I am a fan of a flood coat, but that's a great thing that you can do. Work your way up with a polishing kit, bring you back to a high gloss shine. Or if you can't do that, and this is kind of if you're in a pickle and you need a fix, don't underestimate how cool epoxy looks when it's matte. And by matte, I mean if we were to sand this down and not finish it again, it will still look really neat. So hopefully that answers that question. Trying to think, do we got any more, guys? Besides, the challenge starts on the 6th, April 6th. It's just right around the corner, so you want to make sure that you're signing up for it. Pages and pages and pages of information, as well as me coming back on here to talk to you guys, see where you're at in your projects. Do you have any questions? The link is in the Woodworkers Guild. I think if it's not on the feed right now, it will be shortly. You can also find it on Woodworkers Guild of America, as well as Crow Creek Designs, which is my space. It's free. Did I say that? If not, it's like this commercial. It's like free. So you want to make sure you're doing that. New project every 3 days. And again, you're going to have plenty of time to do these. We're going to be talking about them, so don't feel rushed. Getting building up towards that cool river table. I think it's something, there was a picture in the graphic here to show you guys it. And I think that's it. If you guys don't have any other questions, thanks for coming back on here and joining us. I know we've had a couple of technical difficulties. It may have been lagging at time. Really appreciate having you all on here and taking the time to listen to me ramble a little bit. I'm just kind of don't have anything else. Okay. I look forward to seeing you. I really do. I love seeing your projects. Make sure that you're signed up. There's still plenty of time to get everything, and reach out on here if you have any questions. And thanks, guys. We'll see you on Monday the 6th.